dividend checks. Listen to what he had to say.
They told me that next year is projected to be the largest tax refund season ever, and we're going to be giving back refunds out of the tariffs because we've taken in literally trillions of dollars, and we're going to be given a nice dividend to the people in addition to reducing debt.
The president also spoke about lowering taxes to the point that many could pay very little for income tax or eventually having no income tax at all due to how much money the country is making from his tariff policies. Any changes to the tax code will need approval from Congress. NTD spoke to several Republican lawmakers to get a sense for how they feel about the dividend checks. NTD's Melina Weiskup reports.
If the president wants to realize this goal of sending $2,000 dividend checks to American families, Congress will need to sign off on it. But it appears right now that most Republicans are undecided as to whether or not they would support this. One Republican Senator, Ron Johnson from Wisconsin, said that any revenue that is gained from tariffs should be used to pay down the national debt. Yesterday, I asked several lawmakers on the House side how they feel about such an idea. Many of them told me they need to wait and see how the numbers add up. What are your thoughts on President Trump's idea to give $2,000 dividend checks to people from the tariff revenues that he's raking in right now?
Well, I think people would welcome that, and I think that people need to understand that the tariffs are a tool in the tool chest the president is using to negotiate trade deals. That's the most significant thing because he has negotiated a number of great trade deals.
I'm not sure. We have to really look at that. That has to be something that we have to really think through.
It's something I need to learn more about. First time in a decade, we actually have more money than we're spending out because President Trump's decisions are slowly but surely turning the tide. Now, we got a long ways to go, but I think he's a great president. He's making a lot of progress.
Now, House Speaker Mike Johnson previously said he thinks this is a good idea, but he also says he needs to wait and see how the math looks next year.
He's thinking about something maybe midway into next year when the tariff revenue is realized and we can figure out what that looks like.
Considering Republicans' slim majority in Congress, there will need to be significant, if not entire, Republican support for this in order for it to get through Congress if all Democrats are opposing it. But I think what could help Trump get Republicans on board with this is if they see the tariffs consistently raking in a substantial amount of revenue, and of course the pressure could continue to grow if Trump keeps tightening up on this request. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
President Trump suggested that Americans may not have income tax to pay in the future. Joining us to discuss is Joseph Trevisani, economic and currency analyst at FX Street. Joseph, always great to see you. Good afternoon. So what is your view on the likelihood and feasibility of tariff revenue completely replacing income tax? Because calculations...
Hi, Don. Good to see you. Is tariff revenue going to replace the income tax? I can say that quite unequivocally, no, it will not. There really isn't any chance. The government needs and depends on income tax. And the idea that a tariff can, without damaging the economy, make it at high enough levels without damaging the economy, it just doesn't seem realistic. Is this a political statement? Yes, I would imagine so.
So you talked about raising tariffs to the point that is enough for income tax replacement while not damaging the economy. Can you talk a bit more about that? Because according to calculations by Axios, the money that is required, the revenue required is $2.5 trillion a year to offset income tax. What would be the impact of that on trade and the economy?
Well, it would be disastrous. I don't think there's any realistic point that will happen. I mean, even if you just talk about even if you take the extreme point of view and say every industry that manufactures here will be totally autarkic, meaning just here in the United States, it still requires all sorts of raw materials, of partially finished products from overseas. I don't really see any reality to that. Now, are we talking about economic reality or political reality? As far as a political reality goes, I can see why a political party or a president or a leader might want to posit this as a goal to reach for. But as far as a realistic economic policy, I don't see it being very realistic.
So another side of this is, do you think tariffs are a sustainable revenue source for a country in general?
Yes, that's true. And they are a sustainable revenue source if they stay in place. Meaning, for many, many years after the Second World War, there were very few tariffs in the United States for incoming goods. So now that has changed. Could it change again? Of course it can. So the idea that you're going to have a steady stream into the future from a revenue source, meaning tariffs, that will remain unchanged, since Trump himself and his administration has used tariffs largely as a negotiating point to get other countries to change their tariff regimes, their import quotas, things like that. So if it is already in its current position being used as a negotiating tool, it's tough to believe that that will change in the future.
So you talk about tariffs being a negotiation tool. Can you elaborate on that? What is the fundamental purpose of tariffs? And can I ask you, if a government uses tariffs as the primary source of revenue for its spending, is that considered misusing tariffs or not?
Well, it depends on your judgment, I guess. If you are saying, to deal with the second question first, is replacing the income tax, meaning that Americans don't have to pay income tax, with an external source that is charged to foreigners, is that or potentially charged to foreigners, is that a misuse of tariffs? Well, I guess that depends on your point of view. I would say, no, it's not necessarily a misuse of tariffs. After all, how the government generates revenue is open to all sorts of considerations, interpretations, and judgments, and that's not going to change. The reason I think that the administration, and this I agree with them on it, used tariffs as a negotiating tool was because before the Trump administration, at least this Trump administration, the tariff regime around the world with the United States was largely based on conditions that have long since disappeared. For the Europeans, they were based in rebuilding their economy after the Second World War. They were permitted to charge tariffs so they could rebuild their industrial base. For China, on the lead up into its membership into the World Trade Organization, and after that, it was granted tariffs so that it could develop its economy. Neither of these conditions in those two circumstances are still true. Europe does not need to develop its economy, and at least it doesn't need to develop it from the post-World War II disaster. And China is no longer a developing country. It is a fully fledged economic powerhouse with the second largest economy in the world. So the tariffs that permitted, the tariff regime that permitted these countries to charge the US tariffs when we did not charge their goods are no longer true. And that is the reason that Trump used tariffs on incoming goods to change that pattern.
All right, understood. Joseph, another topic I wanted to talk to you about today. Your thoughts on these Trump accounts where newborns will get a $1,000 deposit. How much money could this initial $1,000 turn into after 18 years?
After 18 years, you're going to probably, I don't know, depending on what the economy goes, you'll be at, I don't know, $10,000. That's a guess if it's 18 years. I do know that with the run of the stock market over the past 15 years, I can just speak from my own experience that my daughter's 529 accounts here in New York State have tripled in value in about 12 years. So there is a real potential for this. But again, remember, it's based on equities primarily because that's where your money is. Is this a good idea? Of course it's a good idea. How could it be a bad idea? But its value, I think, for the moment is, of course, political. But we are heading into an election year.
So do you think it's likely that parents will have to put additional contributions into the account to see a more meaningful amount of money?
Yes, the more money you put into an account like that, of course, the better it performs. Whether the terms of these accounts will require parents to put in a certain amount of money or have the government match it, I don't really know. I don't know that the details are out on them. But just in general, an investment account is a good idea. There isn't really anything negative about it. And if the government is providing $1,000, that's $1,000 that some people won't have to provide.
Well, all right. That's it, Joseph, for today. Thank you for coming on, and always great to speak with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me, Don. Always good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you. All right, coming up, we have more news after this break. Don't go away.